Genesis 3 is one of the most significant chapters in the Bible because it records the fall of humanity. But what if I told you that this chapter doesn't just explain the past, it also prophesies the future? Many people read Genesis 3 as simply the moment sin entered the world, but hidden within this chapter is a blueprint for the entire plan of redemption. The themes of deception, judgment, the curse, and restoration in Genesis 3 are directly connected to the Antichrist, the final battle, and the new creation in Revelation. The chapter begins with the serpent's deception of Eve. Satan's strategy was not brute force, it was deception. In Genesis 3, verse 1, the serpent asks, "Did God really say?" planting doubt in Eve's mind. Then in verses 4 to 5, he tells her, "You will not surely die. You will be like God." Satan twisted God's words, making sin look appealing by promising hidden knowledge and power. This same tactic will be used again in the end times. 2 Thessalonians 2, 9-10 warns us that the Antichrist will come with false signs and wonders to deceive the world, and Revelation 13, verse 14 tells us the false prophet will deceive people into worshiping the beast. Just as Satan deceived Eve, he will deceive nations before Christ's return. The first deception in Genesis 3 foreshadows the ultimate deception in the last days. After Adam and Eve sinned, God pronounced a curse. Genesis 3, 16-19 describes the consequences: pain in childbirth, the ground being cursed, and death entering the world. Romans 8, verse 22 tells us that the whole creation has been groaning, as in the pains of childbirth. This curse is the reason we experience suffering, natural disasters, and death today. But in Revelation, we see the ultimate consequence of sin unfolding in the Great Tribulation. Revelation 6:16 describes global suffering on a massive scale, as the earth is struck with famine, plagues, and judgment. Just as the curse in Genesis 3 brought suffering to the world, the Great Tribulation will bring global suffering as a final consequence of sin. However, what was cursed in Genesis will be restored in the end. One of the most powerful verses in Genesis 3 is Genesis 3:15, known as the proto-evangelium, or the first prophecy of Jesus. God speaks to the serpent and declares, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." Heel. This is the first direct prophecy of Jesus' victory over Satan. The heel of Christ was bruised on the cross, but in the end, he will crush Satan completely. Revelation 19, 11-16 describes Jesus' second coming, where he will defeat Satan once and for all. And Revelation 20:10 tells us that Satan will be thrown into the lake of fire forever. What started in Genesis 3, the war between the seed of the woman and the serpent, ends in Revelation with Christ's final victory. In Genesis 3, Adam and Eve were banished from the Garden of Eden. Genesis 3, 22-24 tells us that God blocked access to the tree of life to prevent them from living forever in a fallen state. This is significant because the tree of life doesn't disappear forever. It returns in the book of Revelation. Revelation 22, verse 2 says, "The tree of life stood on each side of the river, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month." In the New Jerusalem, the tree of life is restored, bringing healing to the nations. What was lost in Genesis 3 is given back in Revelation 22. This shows that God's plan is full circle, from paradise lost to paradise restored. So what does this all mean for us today? The spiritual war that started in Genesis 3 is still happening right now, and we are living in the final chapter of this battle. The same enemy that deceived Eve is still deceiving people today. Ephesians 6, verse 12 reminds us, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world." The deception that began in the Garden of Eden will reach its peak in the end times when the world follows the Antichrist. But here's the good news. Jesus is coming back to reverse the curse and restore everything that was broken in Genesis 3. Revelation 21:4 declares, "There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. The curse that began in Genesis will be removed forever." The big question is, are we ready for this final chapter? The victory is already won through Jesus, but we must choose which side we are on. Jesus, the second Adam, came to undo the damage caused by the first Adam, and through him, we have the hope of eternal life. The Bible begins in Genesis with creation, fall, and separation from God. but it ends in Revelation with recreation, restoration, and eternal fellowship with God. What do you think? Do you see the connection between Genesis 3 and the end times? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more eye-opening biblical insights.